Senate Environment and Natural Resources Policy and Legacy Finance Committee will come to order. Today is Monday, April 8th. We are going to, Senator Dibble is ready to go. So Senator Dibble, welcome. Senate File 2680. Members, we have a large agenda today, so please keep mindful of the time. Thank you. Senator Dibble.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair and members. I bring to you Senate File number 2680, which is a request to provide funding for the Forever Green Agriculture Initiative at the University of Minnesota to support all of the farms in my district. Actually, we have no farms. That was a joke. But we do eat a lot of food in my district, and you know, we're pretty interested in clean water and clean air and those sorts of things. Forever Green is an initiative at the University of Minnesota led at the College of Food, Agricultural, and Natural Resources Sciences Center, CFANS, which I know all of you are familiar with. I'm sure you've toured some of their facilities. And it also makes use of the genomics, environment, management, and socioeconomic, otherwise known as GEMS or GEMS collaboration. And it's a collaboration of CFANS and the Minnesota Supercomputing Institute, MSI. So the initiative brings together experts in genomics, information science and data management, plant breeding, agronomy, food science, ecosystem science, economics, and commercialization. And so the challenge that Forever Green is seeking to address are, of course, loss and degradation of the soil, impacts on water quality from erosion, runoff, climate change, carbon and greenhouse gas emissions. And the idea is fairly simple, but very involved and very extensive. It's to add additional crops and growing times throughout the year to complement existing row crops and rotational crops such as corn and beans to keep ground covered for all or most of the year with plants that improve the soil, improve water quality, capture and sequester carbon, and are profitable. So the work of the initiative is to do a lot of very basic plant and crop research. We're very familiar with that over at the university. And to speed that process up with powerful data analysis to conduct food and product research. Of course, we know that a lot of that occurs over at CFANS as well. Understand the economics of new agricultural practices and crops and cropping systems, and then also to create partnerships to help commercialize crops and value-added products that result. So that's the very high-level overview, and I have my constituents here who are ready to, I'll let them introduce themselves because I left my little cheat sheet at the table. So why don't you start?
Welcome to the committee, and please identify yourself for the record.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Catherine Frells, and I'm a postdoctoral researcher with the Forever Green Initiative. I am a plant breeder and part of a team creating pennycress, a new cash cover crop. Pennycress is planted in the fall and matures in June, giving Minnesota farmers the opportunity to harvest 2 crops a year, as well as protect their soil and water. In addition to pennycress, we are developing a wide range of new crops, including kernza, which is the first commercially viable perennial grain crop in North America. With each of these crops, it's our goal to provide improvements for water quality, soil health, and pollinators in Minnesota. By growing these winter annual and perennial crops year-round, we stop nitrates from ending up in our groundwater, wells, and our lakes and streams. In fact, we've shown that Forever Green crops can reduce soil nitrate by up to 97%, meaning that this excess nitrogen is being utilized rather than becoming a pollutant. The Forever Green Initiative is not only developing new crops for Minnesota, it also attracts diverse, high-quality, solution-oriented students and scientists, like some of those seated in the gallery today, to the state. I'm from Iowa, and inspired by the poor water quality in my state, my PhD research focused on breeding existing crops for nitrogen use efficiency. However, I knew that breeding only summer annual crops is not enough. The reason I came to the University of Minnesota is that I believe the Forever Green Initiative has the vision, the people, and the crops to improve water quality in Minnesota and eventually the entire Midwest. However, Forever Green crops are still in early development. We need long-term research programs to make them profitable and attractive for farmers. I encourage each of you to support this bill so that we can realize our shared goal of a clean environment and thriving farms. Our next speaker, Dr. Gabe Guzmini, from PepsiCo, will share how Forever Green also creates value for industry.
Thank you and welcome to the committee.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Gabe Guzmini. I'm the Director of Crop Science Research at PepsiCo, the Food and Beverage Corporation. We started a collaboration with the University of Minnesota about 4 years ago that resulted into building a team on campus of about 10 to 12 of our scientists leading the research in the space and collaborating in various areas with faculty and students at the university. One of the key motivations for this partnership was the Forever Green program, because it's a unique program around the world. We couldn't find any other organization that had such a comprehensive program in looking at new crops that could be introduced into the agricultural landscape. And of course, with new crops come new ingredients for products, and the crops that this program is studying bring various advantages from processing ability to health and nutrition advantages for the consumer, but most of all, they help lowering the environmental footprint of the supply chain of the established crops that are key elements or key components of our products. In conclusion, we do participate, and we're particularly focused on helping to identify what end uses this crop could target and help taking to market some of the crops that could potentially be useful into the food value chain for the type of products that we produce. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Madam Chair, I have Carmen Fernholz, who's with the Land Stewardship Project in the Farm.
Welcome.
Madam Chair, Senate Committee, thank you for the opportunity. I'm Carmen Fernholz. I have a 500-acre certified organic cash crop farm near Madison, Minnesota. And we've heard the other two testify about what the university is doing and what industry is doing and their interest in Forever Green. Let me give it from a farmer's perspective. When each of us, as recipients of an abundant, reliable source of food, considers how we have entrusted farmers with a major piece of society's responsibility to protect and enhance the environment in which they work every day to produce this food, a responsibility and duty that includes water quality, soil health, and recreational venues, we all, government, education, research, and industry, need to stand up and take ownership and investment in providing the best means possible to assure the success of this trust. We all need to make the effort to provide win-win solutions to assure the best outcomes. By choice, yes, but by a sense of duty and responsibility as well, we farmers have taken on and accept our share of this task of protecting the environment in which all of us live and work, as well as spend the time vacationing. As a consequence of this choice, we as farmers are committed to producing a safe, abundant, environmentally friendly, and affordable food system for the society of which we are an integral part. So when each of us, consumers and farmers alike, as beneficiaries of the revenue-enhancing as well as the environmentally friendly structures being created by the Forever Green Initiative, begin to realize and appreciate its potential, it is indeed exhilarating as a farmer to study and begin to understand, appreciate, and adapt the creative economic opportunities embodied in the Forever Green Initiative. The diversity of components in this initiative create a variety of options to more readily allow us as farmers to generate significant sources of revenue within our existing farming enterprises, while at the same time fulfilling the responsibilities of protecting and enhancing this environment that we are a part of. Responsibilities that include clean, accessible water, healthy, productive soils, and recreational opportunities for all ages. All of this while simultaneously doing our part to feed all of us with wholesome, healthy food. And so in the end, it all comes down to investment in the initiative and the initiation of these new crops, and secondly, investment in the implementation of the crops on the land and moving them into the markets. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, are there any questions? Senator Senjum.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, members, and to any other witnesses. I'm trying to understand, and we can all certainly agree on clean water and all those virtuous things. So this is $10 million to fund the Forever Green Agriculture Initiative, and that's going to protect state natural resources. But the question is really how agriculture has been around a long time. What will this fund that we don't know already, or is it a reimbursement to farmers to do this, or what is the money going to be used for? I guess that's the question.
Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. I'll take the first stab at it, and then I'll refer to the professor. So it would be dollars that would go to the University of Minnesota, and it would fund the Forever Green initiative there, which is housed at CFANS, and it's a collaboration with GEMS. And it would fund basic research, and it would fund on plant genomics and the kind of research that occurs over a great deal at the University of Minnesota. It would fund an analysis, efforts to explore developing these crops into products and working with developing partnerships to get those products to market. There's a great deal of data analysis that's being done in conjunction with the supercomputing center there. So it would help fund some of those activities. And to answer your question more generally, if you take a look at either this handout or probably more interesting, this handout, it shows how all the different sorts of different crops and different plants that have a high potential of helping cover the land year-round, or during seasons when the ground isn't covered, or in parts of farmer land, for example, the buffers that have been set aside. There's potential to use the buffer strips for productive agriculture with some fruits and some of those sorts of things. So there's just a lot to learn about. First of all, a lot of these plants aren't quite ready. They need to be, altered. All that stuff that they do over at the test plots. They need to figure out where in a farm these plants work best. If you're going to be doing alternating growing systems, that's kind of complicated, and they need to figure out how that works best. I'll stop there because I'm getting past my expertise.
With that, Senator Senjum, does that answer your question? Or
Well, maybe just to follow up, and thank you for that. Are we doing genetic modification such that we'll actually be growing food in the wintertime? Is that reasonable to think about? Is that what you're working on?
Senator, I can speak to that. So what we are doing, we're using traditional breeding practices to adapt either existing species, whether they have been used for a different purpose, such as forage, or just developing a whole new crop species from something we've never grown as any sort of crop before. And these are, yes, they won't be actively growing in the winter, but these crops will be planted in the fall, in the case of a winter annual, and then they protect the soil. They form a green living cover that's protecting the soil over the winter. And as soon as it warms up in the spring, that's when they do most of their growing and the crop production.
Thank you, Madam.
members, are there other questions? Senator Dibble, thank you. With
Madam
that,
Chair, I really did want to encourage folks to, this is an extremely interesting booklet, and it shows all the different crop types that are under examination. And so you can read the overview of each one, and then to answer Senator Simpson's question, what exactly is being investigated or researched on each crop type and what their potential is. And then this one is just kind of the overview.
Thank you, Senator. Hearing no further discussion, Senate File 2680 will be laid over for possible inclusion in the Senate Omnibus Bill. Thank you, Senator Dibble. Senator Cohen. Senate File 1672. Welcome to the committee, Senator Cohen.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Delighted to be able to present Senate File 1672 to you, which is a request for the appropriation for some of the statewide educational initiatives for the Science Museum of Minnesota. I've been involved with the Science Museum since not the inception of the Science Museum, which would have been decades and decades ago, but since the Science Museum first sought support from the state legislature, which was for the new building in St. Paul, which was begun about 20 years ago, and have continued to offer support and authorship of their requests, both the general fund request as well as what has now been their legacy request. And would just indicate before we have testimony from the Science Museum, I'll quote one of the members of the Senate, one of our colleagues, Senator Newman, who a couple of years ago during the bonding process, when the Science Museum had some significant physical plant damage and there was a request for some support for repair, Senator Newman's comment in the Finance Committee was that the Science Museum is truly a significant statewide asset, and it was mandatory in the context of that particular request that we follow through with what was being requested by the Science Museum. And I think Senator Newman, I believe, speaks for a lot of members of the Senate and the legislature in total relative to the importance and what the Science Museum has meant to the state of Minnesota. So again, happy to present the request from the Science Museum, and if members would be willing, would like to offer some testimony.
Thank you. Welcome to the committee. Who would like to go first?
Thank you. I will, Madam Chair. So thank you. I'm Allison Ruppel-Brown, President and CEO of the Science Museum of Minnesota. I'm joined by John Severson. He's our Director of Strategic Partnerships. And we are pleased to join you to thank you for your 10 years of support through legacy funding, which has transformed our museum's ability to deliver our mission in support of our youth throughout the state, and to share a brief overview of our request for fiscal year 2021. The Science Museum is nationally recognized for excellence in education and exhibit programming, and we emphasize hands-on learning and continue our work in natural history museum with scientific research, collections, and exhibits. And we are proud to provide essential educational support for teachers and students throughout the entire state of Minnesota. You have a map in front of you. It's color-coded, and you can see on there for the 5th straight year, we've reached all 87 counties of Minnesota, including the very tippy top, the northwest angle, where our staff have to go actually up into Canada and then drop back down to get the little red schoolhouse there to reach the tippy top of the state. And with our mission to turn on science, inspire learning, inform policy, and improve lives, we're proud to represent Minnesota, serving as a leader nationally in the area of informal science education across the broader museum field. And we understand the importance of STEM learning, so science, technology, engineering, and math, and workforce readiness. STEM careers will grow 3 times faster than all other careers combined in the next 10 years, and we already had a shortage of STEM talent in this state. A recent article in the Star Tribune stated we have a shortage of 50,000 tech workers in our state, and we're working to help fill that gap, fill that worker pipeline. We are very grateful, really grateful for the generous support we've received over the past 10 years. Legacy funding has powered our statewide school initiative. Since Legacy's inception, we have served over 1 million Minnesota students, providing engaging programming and teacher trainings in all 87 counties, in case I have not mentioned that already. The dissemination of our award-winning exhibit, Race, Are We So Different, has reached communities around Minnesota, not just here in our St. Paul home. We are converting our very popular William L. McKnight 3M Omni Theater to be digital, and we look forward to welcoming you to that opening, this grand opening later this fall. And lastly, legacy funding allows us to share the rich history and ongoing stories of our Dakota and Ojibwe citizens by interpreting our fantastic American Indian collections in our beautiful exhibit, We Move and We Stay. Today, we're asking for your consideration for over $1,650,000 over the coming biennium. This is a 37% increase to our current appropriation of $1.2 million. This funding will continue to support the outstanding results achieved with our statewide school initiative and allow us to expand those results. We'll build on the work to deepen the impact we have on Minnesota families and communities and provide greater online access to our Minnesota-based collections. These projects will be discussed in greater detail in a moment. State sources represent 5.5% of our $43 million budget, with legacy funding representing roughly 1/4 of our state funding. Though not a majority revenue stream, the 1.4% represented by legacy is extremely important. We count on those dollars to serve students across the state with fun, interactive, and stimulating formal STEM education. Given our limited time together today, I'll refer you to the printed report we've provided to highlight the significant results we've achieved in the past biennium. But I will share that last year alone, over 162,000 students were reached with our programs in all 87 counties and experienced a school field trip, outreach programs, or teacher professional development. I'm now ask John to provide some details.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members.
Mr. Severson, welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record.
Thank you. I'm John Severson with the Science Museum. Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Our current request builds on the strengths of programs which have previously received support from this committee and can be broken down into three major buckets. One is the continuation and expansion of our statewide school programming, which Allison has referenced. The second is the expansion of our statewide family and community programming. And lastly, we are seeking support to provide greater digital access for our Minnesota-based anthropology collections. With all of these, we will seek to continue to serve all 87 counties in the state with very impactful STEM programming. We will also work collaboratively with school districts to understand what their STEM needs are and align our programming and services to those needs. Legacy does represent a unique funding source for us in that it allows us to develop programming in response to those needs, and in the past has supported such programming which has resulted in the Big Weather Experience, Tornado Alley, and other pieces which have been favorites among the schools. With the statewide community and family programming, we wish to build on the successes that we have seen both through pilots in St. Paul, but also through statewide programming being supported with our Race, Are We So Different statewide Greater Minnesota program. There is a very strong appetite for this, and we also know, research shows and we know that parents are the very best teachers for young learners, and we wish to leverage the work that we are doing to provide greater programming and resources across Minnesota. And lastly, with our collections digitization, we are looking for support to create greater access for this Minnesota cultural heritage. The key components to this is to create an online user interface. We have received funding to support digitization of elements of our collection. What we are seeking now is the piece which is going to make it available to the public. This isn't, as our curator said, particularly sexy work, but it's important to making sure that the work that we have done is available to students, teachers, and researchers. And we would also then be able to physically integrate the collections which we have had support in digitization to make those available. Further, we have a couple of elements of our collection which we would be also working with, including our very significant Hmong collections. We have videos of Hmong elders, which we would be able to digitize and make available online. We currently have 4 live archaeological digs across the state in Wadena, Washington, Dakota, and Lincoln counties, and we would be able to provide real-time updates with that and literally just help bring Minnesota's cultural heritage to life.
Yeah, so thank you. Members, are there questions? Well, Senator Cohen, thank you. This is, I think that I can attest to the fact that this is multi-generational. I have had children and grandchildren, and I hope soon to bring the great-grandchildren in, and it's just a wonderful experience, and Greater Minnesota loves to come to the Science Museum. So thank you for your presentation today, and with that, Senate File 1672 will be laid over for possible inclusion. Thank you.
Madam Chair and members, thank you.
Senator Pappas, Senate File 658. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just start while my witnesses are coming up to the witness table here. Thank you so much, Madam Chair and members. Senate File 658 is based on a statewide proposal that was funded by the Legacy Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund for the past 2 funding cycles. It's created opportunities for awareness and education and responded to necessary dialogue between Somalis and the communities they live in, where tension and misunderstanding has been growing. Over the past 4 years, there's been some successes in communities like St. Cloud, Rochester, Wilmer, and the Twin Cities. But the fact is there are still a number of cultural challenges within and between the Somali and non-Somali communities around the state. So Kajuk is back in partnership with other Somali organizations locally and in Greater Minnesota to help resolve these problems and make our communities stronger and more vibrant. Those organizations include Kajuk in Twin Cities in Greater Minnesota, Midnimo in St. Cloud, the Somali American Parent Association in the Twin Cities, Midwest Community Development in Faribault and Wilmer, the Brave Foundation in Ramsey County, and the Afro-American Development Association in Clay County and Pelican Rapids. Madam Chair, please welcome Mr. Mohammed Farah, the Executive Director of Kajuk.
Mr. Farah, welcome, and please identify yourself for the record.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank you so much for having us. My name is Mohammed Farah. Good afternoon. I am the Executive Director of Kajuk, a Somali youth development organization tailored towards enriching the lives of Somali American youth by utilizing the positive elements of education, mentoring, employment, and the arts and humanities. Established in 2007 by a group of young people, Kajuk focuses its effort on encouraging Somali youth from negative influences such as drugs, violence, and other behaviors that are detrimental to their development and future. Instead, we direct them towards higher education, civic involvement, and volunteer commitment to their community. I'm also here before you today representing and speaking on behalf of a coalition of organizations throughout the state which will carry out the work of this bill throughout the state. Building trust and relationship within the community is a key part of our work. This is done through our Funka program. Funka means the art in Somali. We use art and humanities as a way to not only teach young people about their culture and heritage, but to use art as a way to build connections, trust, and relationship between the East African community and the greater community. Providing opportunities for intercultural dialogue is a key factor of this program. Using spoken word, storytelling, visual arts, plays, and are just examples of the way we help provide opportunities for intercultural dialogue. A good example of our work includes a play that we put together that's called The Chronicles of the Diaspora. This particular play was the first play written in English that we know of today. The play highlighted the experience of 2 Somali American immigrants and examines their version of the American dream. Many forces play into the story of these families: identity crisis, anti-immigrant sentiments, and the strains of preserving culture, mental health, suicide, domestic abuse, topics that are considered taboo, and highlights the misunderstandings and the tensions between long-time Americans and their new Somali neighbors. Promises of prosperity and happiness are felt that reach far beyond the limbo of living in 2 cultures. The play was shown in different cities, such as Minneapolis and St. Cloud. For example, we had both Somali and non-Somali actors in some cases, depending on where we went. The focus of the storyline changed based on the location where the play was being showcased to reflect the real issues in that particular city. After the play, we would have a discussion as a community and talk about ways that we can tackle these issues as residents of St. Cloud or Minneapolis or St. Paul. We always made sure that we had elected officials, community folks, both Somalis and non-Somalis, as part of the audiences in order to have a robust community-led discussions. Some of these topics that we discussed previously included, but not limited to, racism, anti-immigrant sentiments, mental health, identity, and tensions between communities and how we can overcome them. Madam Chair and committee members, we have a lot of work ahead of us, especially in greater Minnesota. We don't have many opportunities for intercultural dialogue in many places throughout Minnesota. We don't have these opportunities. When we don't have these opportunities, we see fear. We see the lack of dialogue, the lack of education, and because of this, people do sometimes get hurt mentally and physically. And we've seen this play out in many ways. You have the power to change this course moving forward, and I hope you can heavily consider this bill that is before you today. We are living in a critical time, and we need your leadership and advocacy on this issue. I would like to thank Senator Pappas for her leadership and advocacy for this bill. I also would like to thank the chair and members for their past support. With your continuous support, we can do some amazing work throughout Minnesota, and I hope you can consider this bill with a heavy heart. Thank you for your time and your support for Senate File 658. I would like to introduce now Haji Yusuf from the St. Cloud area.
Welcome, and please identify yourself for the record. Thank you.
Haji Yusuf from St. Cloud. Thank you, Madam Chair, and the members of the committee for giving us this opportunity to be able to sit in front of you and basically articulate what my colleague has said. But more importantly, Arts and Humanity, I am with an organization called biennium, and translated that into English means unity, united. And basically, what we've been trying to do for so many years is create dialogue between different established communities and new communities, and how best these two cultures can come together at the same time respecting each other. And then came in Kajok, helped amplify some of the work that we were doing with some of the grants they have received. For example, before it was more like we were going out and try to reach our neighbors, our friends, our community in St. Cloud. But most of the time it will be difficult because rarely will you find a situation where you can meet with people individually, but you need to speak to people as a group. And what a better way for Kajok to come into the picture and help us amplify what we're trying to do by creating a play called The Chronicle of Diaspora. So when they came to St. Cloud, we were able to host them at St. Cloud State University. We had almost 1,500 audience members from the community listening and being part of this play and having that conversation in the same place. So this is what we're talking about when we talk art and humanity, is the possibility of bringing communities together. Not only just pushing one idea or one culture, but bringing two cultures to come to a point where they're all in sync, where they're all is that, okay, this is something new and something that we can be able to cherish in central Minnesota, in the state of Minnesota, as diversity is growing in our state, as our state is growing in so many ways. I think some of this program have helped us, and they will continue to help us in many places like St. Cloud and many other cities in greater Minnesota. So with all that, we will really appreciate if we could get more support to get some of this done. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Members, are there questions?
I do, sorry, we have one more testifier from the Moorhead area.
Okay, if you have something different to add. Welcome to the committee.
Madam Chair, my name is Mohammed Gaba. I am here on behalf of Afro-American Development Association from Moorhead, Minnesota. And as part of this coalition, we are trying to bring the success that Kojok and other organizations have had in places like St. Cloud, Minneapolis, and Wilma to Moorhead and Moorhead area to help the Somali Americans there. Afro-American is the primary Somali American organization serving Moorhead area, and we help both adults and youth with education, arts, and employment services. Let me, Mo Farah and the rest have articulated basically the benefits of this program, but I wanted to just tell you a little story about my own situation and how these programs can help us. I have a son. He's 12 years old now, but a few years ago, when he was about 4 years old, we had a police officer that used to come to the neighborhood. And one time we were taking a stroll, and the police officer basically, my son saw the police officer, and he started screaming, bad boy, what you gonna do, what you gonna do? And then the cop started hitting the brake and basically called my son over. And my son got in the car, he got a badge, he had a nice conversation with the police officer. So basically what we're trying to do is bring that kind of innocent understanding, build trust and relationship with between the new Americans, the immigrant community, and the established communities in Morehead area. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Members, other questions? Senator Pappas?
Just appreciate your support.
Thank you, Senator Pappas. With that, Senate File 658 will be laid over for possible inclusion. And thank you for coming today.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, members.
Senator Pappas, Senate File 1392.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The second bill, 1392, is for the Hmong Cultural Center Museum and Library, and it's a $200,000 allocation to support the programming and educational outreach efforts of the museum and library over the next 2 years. The Hmong Cultural Center was started in 1992, so it's one of the oldest among the Hmong organizations in Minnesota. This appropriation will support several activities over the next 2 years that includes the expansion of existing museum exhibits, support to produce new outreach brochures, enhanced staffing for group tours of the museum and library, planning and development of educational curricula tied to Minnesota State K-12 standards intended for school groups visiting the exhibits. And I have 2 testifiers with me today who will introduce themselves.
Oh, all right. Who would like to go first?
Thank you, Madam. And Senate member, my name is Song Pao Lee.
Welcome.
I believe the Hmong Cultural Center is one of the oldest organizations in Minnesota. Hmong Cultural Center Museum and Library currently included the following exhibit: Hmong Minnesota, yesterday and today, a 16-panel exhibit on local Hmong Cultural Center and history, the Hmong folk art experience, an interactive exhibit teaching about major Hmong folk art form and music instrument through 6-panel object display and iPad station, as well as comprehensive research library, which include the largest collection of the Hmong-related books, PhD, dissertation, and economic research in the Hmong in the United States. Our Hmong folk art experience exhibit has just been awarded a 2019 Minnesota Historical Award by the Minnesota Alliance of Local History and Museum. Our museum and library are open to public daily on University Avenue in St. Paul and serve up to 80,000 Hmong in Minnesota, and as well as members of the broader community seeking to learn more about Hmong in our neighbor here. So I have the brochure has been distributed a few days ago. So we have included many of our exhibition and the brochure here. So this is one of the most important that we have many people who walk in to visit and tour at the center. They will gather information that we have in this cultural center or at the museum. So come along with Jair.
Thank you.
Ms.
Her? Thank you. Welcome to the committee, and please identify yourself for the record.
Thank you. I'm Jaya. The funding we are requesting for the Hmong Cultural Center, Museum, and Library will support the following activities over the next 2 years. The expansion of existing museum exhibits to include panels and objects displays on the history of Hmong businesses and Hmong organizations in St. Paul and Minnesota, and Hmong cultural ceremonies for weddings and funerals. Support for the production of new outreach brochures and exhibits programs, as well as increased staffing for group tours of museums and libraries. The planning and development of educational curriculums tied to Minnesota State K-12 standards intended for school groups visiting our museum exhibits. The planning and development of a traveling exhibit that can be loaned to other community institutions, including museums and libraries around the state for display. To sum up, if the project is funded, St. Paul and Minnesota residents will have greater opportunities to learn about Hmong history in Minnesota, Hmong achievements in the state, and Hmong culture more generally. The proposed project builds strongly on Hmong Culture Center's heritage over the past 27 years, teaching the public about Hmong culture and history. It is also strongly related to the key goal of the Legacy Fund. Arts, history, and culture heritage programs will engage our diverse communities from every corner of the state in celebrating the richness of our differences while building greater understanding and connection to the values that bind us together.
Thank you. Members, are there questions? Jai, I do have a question. Are you related to our esteemed Senator Fong He?
Somewhat from my father-in-law's side.
Oh, very nice. Well, he sits next to me in committee, and I thoroughly enjoy his company, so I was hoping. So anything else, Senator Pappas?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. With that, Senate File 1392 will be laid over for possible inclusion in the omnibus bill. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
I see Senator Bingham. Welcome to the committee. Senate File 1086. Senator Bingham, when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have the A1 amendment to get the bill in the form that I'd like.
Senator Bingham, could you maybe just explain the A1 while it's being passed out?
Absolutely, Madam Chair. First, thank you for allowing the hearing today on this very important topic. The A1 amendment makes an appropriation to the Minnesota Historical Society out of the Arts and Cultural Fund of $200,000 to work with the League of Women Voters in Minnesota to really preserve the history and culture by commemorating the 100th anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment. Madam Chair and members, as we know, the year 2020 is the 100th anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment, giving women the right to vote. But what you all may not know is that South St. Paul, where I represent, the first women voted after passage, and it was for a water bond referendum, and it passed, and it was very important. And so with me today, I have the Michelle Whitty from the League of Minnesota, or League of Women Voters. I was going to say Minnesota Cities, but League of Women Voters. And then also Jill Zenzer from the 2020 Women's Vote Centennial, and they have very brief testimony, Madam Chair.
Members, are there any questions on the A1 amendment? Senator Howell moves the A1 amendment. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, motion carried. Senator Bingham, who would like to go first?
Ms. Whitty.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Michelle Whitty. I'm Executive Director of the League of Women Voters Minnesota, and delighted to highlight my written testimony today and the great remarks from Senator Bingham to add support for this timely bill. I do realize that legacy dollars are tight, but we ask you to consider the following. A centennial is just that, once every 100 years, so we won't be back. So this is a one-time ask. I wanted to put that right up front. But also, of course, the opportunity to highlight Minnesota's story within a national centennial movement. There'll be a lot out there about the 19th Amendment. This is a chance for us to really highlight our great Minnesota legacy. Also, funding will be used to help us maximize events that are already happening here in the Capitol by sharing greater access to all Minnesotans through statewide programming. We're very committed to that. These are things that need to happen here at the Capitol, but we want to provide greater access to this throughout the state. And to create an enduring set of resources to honor the scholarship that has gone on around this movement. We will also do this with a lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and add to the stories of women of color to our narrative, which have often been left behind. And lastly, I'm most excited about this great opportunity to honor the cultural and historical legacy that continues to live on today right here in this room. The voice of women within our democracy was made possible thanks to the hard work of many strong women and men here in Minnesota, and we owe it to them to tell their stories and ensure that this important time in our history is remembered by all. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I don't have you on the list, but please identify yourself for the tape.
Madam Chair and members, thanks for having us today. My name is Jill Zahnizer. I'm on the steering committee of the National Women's Vote Centennial Initiative and also working at the state level, resident of St. Paul, Minnesota.
Welcome.
Thank you. I have submitted written testimony, and I'd just like to emphasize a couple ideas in that written testimony. The history of the women's suffrage movement and the women's 2020 centennial is about what it takes to maintain and improve a democracy. Women did this over 3 generations, pushed the United States, challenged the United States to live up to its founding ideals. The state government of Minnesota has already decided that it's in its vested interest to encourage efforts like this. American history is a required subject in our schools for every child. We're spending millions of dollars to hopefully teach Minnesota and American history to children. But not all history happens in the classroom. And so the Minnesota state government funds History Day so students can pursue their own interest in history. We also fund something as simple as the I voted stickers so that people can be proud of the fact that they voted and encourage other people to vote. Very much part of public education. This is what the 2020 centennial is. We don't see much women's history still in the schools, and that's part of a larger discussion. But the centennial is a great opportunity to allow people to learn how long women fought and again challenged the United States and Minnesota to live up to its founding ideals. I think the 2020 centennial also ties in with something else the state funds in a variety of ways as well, and that is furthering the equality of women. We spend a lot of money at the state government in positive and negative ways to further the equality of women, and celebrating the 2020 centennial and encouraging people to learn about the women's suffrage movement encourages them also to acknowledge how crucial a part of United States history and Minnesota history women have been, and furthers that idea of the equality of women and treating women with respect. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, other questions? Thank you, Senator Begum. And hearing no further discussion, Senate File 1086 will be laid over for possible inclusion. And thank you for coming, ladies. And Senator Begum, I believe you have the next bill also.
I do, Madam Chair. Senate File 2387.
When you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be very brief on this one as well. I am proud that South St. Paul has the Serbian Cultural Center in South St. Paul. Very diverse town. They have the Croatian Hall, the Polish Hall, and they have the Serbian Hall. And so today we're here to talk about the Serbian Hall and asking for $150,000 in 2020 and in 2021 out of the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund to really preserve the history and cultural heritage of Serbian immigrants in Minnesota. And here to talk about this gem in South St. Paul is Alex, and I don't know how to say your last name without embarrassing myself.
Thank you, Senator
Welcome
Begum.
to the committee, and I also would like to know how to pronounce that. It's a challenge that I don't think I'm up to today. So welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. My name is Alex Stojmanovic,
and
I'm the president of Serbian Cultural Center Minnesota, based in South St. Paul. The building, the Serbian Hall, is a 3-level, 9,000 square foot building that's registered. That's nationally registered historic building, and it is located in South St. Paul. It's a classic brick building that Eastern European immigrants built for their communities. They use those buildings to feed the recent immigrants, to house them, but also for gymnastics, and they had their own place there. So the main level of the building is covered in oak hardwood floor. It has a big stage, 30-foot ceilings, and large windows on each side. So the structure itself is important as a historical landmark. Inside the building, we also have a history of Serbians, people that built the building, people that preserved it, all the way to this day. Many Serbians left Europe during the First World War. 1/3 of male population of Serbians was lost in that war. Those that made their way to Minnesota built this as a community center for themselves. 20 years later, there is a book, Forgotten 500, that I will highly recommend that members read. It's about the greatest rescue mission of Second World War that not many people know about. In 1944, American airmen were shot down over Romanian oil fields and ended up in Serbia. And 500 of them were saved by Serbian royalists and peasants. Many of those were executed after Second World War by communists. And that was the second wave of Serbian immigrants arriving to the United States. Those that made their way to Minnesota have their stories told in Serbian Hall. We have many documents, photographs, letters that we're afraid to even open, afraid that we're actually going to lose them. We don't have that much funding. Right now, building serves as a museum that no one visits. It's almost as a vacant building. We need funds to repair it, to repair the exterior of it, to put a fire suppression system, to improve the plumbing, heating, air conditioning, and just to overall make it more safe. We will also like to repurpose it so it's a part of the vibrant South St. Paul community. There's a Croatian hall in PNC nearby. They have liquor licenses. Serbian Hall does not. We want Serbian Hall to serve as a community center that people can rent and enjoy. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Stojmenovic. Members, are there questions? Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
With that, Senate File 2387 will be laid over for possible inclusion. Senator Herr, Senator Herr here? Oh, there we are. Senator Herr, Senate File 1475.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and it's a perfect day to wear green. Make you look good as a chair of the Legacy Committee here.
Senator, I remind you, though, that we do, I know you have lots of testifiers, but we do have a time constraint today.
Yes, okay. Madam Chair, Senate File 1475 asks for an appropriation to the Minnesota Humanities Center for a grant to the Dow Group. The Dow Group is an art organization that provides exhibit, programs, and events to preserve Hmong arts and culture. One crucial key element of their program is to bring youth and cultural elders together for artistic assemble and to share those artistic innovations with the larger public. The ask is for year 2020 and 2021. I will stand by for question after the testimony, and here to testify first is Mr. Tu Saikao Lee, who can tell you more about the organization and the work that they do.
Mr. Lee, welcome to the committee, and please state your name for the record.
Greetings. Yeah. Good afternoon. My name is Tu Saik Lee. Thank you, Madam Chair and Senators. I'm a Hmong American community leader and artist, grandson of a Hmong War veteran, and I continue to honor his memory by participating in leadership as well as giving back to my Twin Cities community. I also represent DIAL, which is Data-Driven Initiatives for Artist Leadership. And our mission is to leverage skills and talents of artists to improve the lives of underdeserved communities. I grew up in the Frogtown and East Side neighborhoods of St. Paul. They weren't that many role models for me growing up. In fact, I became a young person that got in trouble and had to turn my life around. But I found my voice in poetry, in music as a teenager. But I wasn't given that many opportunities to share my talents until I got to college. And while I was a college student, I was able to create after-school programs for my community and create space for young people to express themselves. I believe in positive role models, giving back to community. I feel like these programs will keep youth away from trouble and other issues like mental health. Through these creative outlets, students become more expressive. They become more confident in themselves. And it wasn't until I engaged, I felt like I lost my sense of identity and language, but it wasn't until I really connected with my grandma, who came into my life when I was a teenager, that I felt like I deepened my cultural identity. Now, my grandmother is an artist herself. She does gutsia, which is traditional Hmong arts. And I found out through collaborating with my grandma for over 10 years that she didn't have the opportunity to read, write, or go to school. So she had to memorize her poems and improvise her poems. So I was like, wow, my grandma freestyles? She's like a rapper of her generation. And I felt like through my work with other various communities that a lot of communities valued elders. And recently, a year ago, my grandmother passed away. And to me, when an elder passes away, it's like a library burning down. But I will keep my grandmother's library open and continue this work across cultures and generations for generations to come. We use our songs to revitalize language. We use our storytelling to engage children in their history. I was inspired by hearing my grandfather's courage as a soldier, and I adopted his name, Saikal. And this motivates me to be successful and contribute here in Minnesota. I also think it's important to collaborate with other communities, to have a vision to bridge. A powerful way forward is to be united, utilizing creativity, honoring cultures across generations, so we can be a stronger, diverse community together. I truly believe my purpose is to reach out to those that don't have many opportunities and help nurture their potential to fulfill their goals. Watching them to become successful is something that gives me pride and appreciation for why I'm here. So the next two young people are also teaching artists, mentors, and have the values of contributing to community for the next generation of leadership. So I urge all of you on this honorable committee to support this meaningful initiative. Thank you.
Thank you.
China Moore.
Good day, Madam Chair and Senators. My name is China Moore. I am a third-generation Hmong immigrant and currently a senior at Central High School.
Welcome.
Before I get started, I'd like to share a little poem with you folks. This poem is about my mother and I and her decision to leave her role as a stay-at-home Hmong wife to pursue her dreams and give me better opportunity as a Hmong woman. Things I would tell myself if I could travel back in time to a home that was meant to fall through the floors, to a time specks of dust floated fearlessly through the air and did not collect in dark corners of cribs. I'd pick my half-awake self up and sing her a lullaby of what she does not know. In a year or so, Mom will place you on her waist, take leather suitcase of faith and all 20 years of herself out that door, because what you don't know is there is not enough oxygen for fires to breathe here, to speak here. She will not let herself fabricate this mythical creature of love she had never seen here, not contribute to tradition of robbed adolescence in return for husbands old enough to be mistaken for uncle. She will not corrode amongst the rice glued onto dirty dishes, so do not hate her for the absence of a father 3 years old. Home will become canned Campbell's chunky soup on nights Mom didn't know what we were going to eat next week. Cigarette butt burns on hand-me-down floors. Learn to trust her direction. Her hands to handles of suitcases and car steering wheels, because there was no such thing as brake when carrying a child over thick sheets of generations gender-biased, 10 years old. You'll only be disappointed by tracking back tire streaks of paths she left behind. Dining tables would never have spots for you. Toes screaming, ladles laughing at our reflections, scooping up our tongues and serving them whole. Mom never let them swallow me. 18 years old. Try to believe you weren't a burden, that the weight of your little legs weren't fast enough to catch buses. Try to believe you weren't a thief in her life, that babysitters could have been trips abroad. Know that she knew what it meant taking you, that if she stayed, you would never know sky, never know heights above shelves to be dusted, death of a childhood she never got to live, never know curiosity that would have been condemned. Know that she was not sentenced to motherhood. Thank Mom for placing you on her waist. taking leather suitcase of faith and all 20 years of herself out that door, because what I know now is I was her first choice, and she gave the next generation voice. Thank you.
Thank you. And Senator Herr, you have 2 more testifiers? Just one?
Yes.
I'd like to share a little bit about my journey through my cultural identity. Ever since I was a little kid, I've always felt a huge disconnect with the Hmong community and the Hmong culture. Growing up in a single-parent home, we never spoke Hmong, only spoke English. Every time I had to go or went to go visit my family, speaking to my grandmother, it was always super difficult because I never knew how to speak Hmong fluently. Imagine having a daughter or a nephew or a niece not being able to talk to you or tell you about their day at school or understand family values that you folks have. It wasn't until I started diving into the art community in the Twin Cities, learning dance and spoken word, that I challenged myself and reflected on my cultural identity and who I was, who I am as a young Hmong woman. I never really had the resources to learn from Hmong artists, learning dance or poetry. And because of that, that has inspired me to start teaching. I am a teacher. I teach dance to youth at local rec centers and studios. I teach to different demographics, different populations, not just Hmong students. And I found within my experience teaching within the community, I didn't have many Hmong students. And that's why I believe in this bill, and I believe it is so important to engage the Hmong youth within the arts and to be informed and educated about their own culture, to be able to tell and to teach others about who we are and where we come from, being able to build bridges and create community. And that is what I hope for future generations. I'm now graduating this year, and I'm looking forward to building community and reaching out to Hmong youth and give them the resources that I never had as a young person. Thank you so much.
And you have one more, Senator Herr?
I do have one more.
All right. Welcome to the committee, and please state your name for the record.
My name is Ken Chris Yang. Hello to all the senators and Madam Chair. I was fortunate enough to be born into the United States of America after my parents escaped certain death during the Vietnam War. I grew up in the neighborhoods of Frogtown, St. Paul, and Northside Minneapolis, where in my childhood, I never really had a lot of art programs growing up. One of the things that I learned while growing up in America is that children are all kind. They are very energetic and they need outlets, but not every child is good at sports or academics. A lot of children like to act, sing, draw, play music. And while doing so, they like to feel as if they belong to a group of friends, families, teachers, someone who they could relate to and talk about life, express their struggles, feelings, thoughts. And that's where a teaching artist such as myself would come in. I've been helping children put their talent and raw passion into expression for several years, helping them write and sing songs in the Hmong language with the inspiration to build the songs through the reference of American music. I am a teaching artist in the Twin Cities. I teach guitar music, song building, and singing. I graduated from McNally Smith College of Music right in the downtown heart of St. Paul here with a music business and guitar performance degree. I teach summer and after-school programs in both St. Paul and Brooklyn Park, and have taught students in a huge age range. One of my youngest students is 8 years old. I have a student whose name was Yang. He went through a lot of hardships in his life. His father passed away at a very young age, and his mother developed a drug addiction. So he had to work very hard for very little. I worked with him every day after school and summertime too. He wrote several songs about the struggles of life, and he even became an amazing guitarist in the process. He's now 22 years old and in college. He's well on his way to becoming a pastor for his community. I have students who have came through my classes who still continue to message me for helps on doing tutorials on certain songs and certain styles. So in return, I send them back clips of how to do it. These children are amazing at what they do. But one of the many issues that they face is they have forgotten their own culture or forgotten to speak their own language. And through song building and singing, a lot of them regain their own tongue back. Children are curious by nature, and so they'll start to pronounce certain words that they've never used before, or even ask for definitions. Programs like this help them maintain their identity, but at the same time allows them to explore all types of American music. Oftentimes, I'll incorporate a lot of rock and roll styles into my lessons, learning from the styles of Stevie Ray Vaughan to B.B. King, and thus making them a better artist. I believe programs such as ours continues to bridge gaps for several communities. We strive to help them maintain their culture and identity, all while opening doors for them to explore and go beyond their communities and connect with other communities. We give them the keys to be confident in themselves and the work that they do so that they can become better leaders for America's tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, are there questions? Senator Dibble.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to say how honored I am to be here with Tao Saiko Lee. We met at the Fierce Lament book launch.
Oh, yes, that's right.
It's a compilation of poetry and visual arts and essays. I made a contribution to the book myself, but he read a piece reminiscent of his grandmother, and it was very powerful. So thank you for being a part of this effort and project, and it's great to have you here.
Thank you, Senator Dibble. Any other questions, members? Senator Herr, with that, Senate File 1475 will be laid over for possible inclusion in the omnibus bill.
Thank you, Madam Chairs and members. This testimony here, we demonstrate that arts can change life. So thank you.
Thank you. Senator Herr, the next three bills are yours. Senate File 1754. You have 5 testifiers. I would ask that you please be respectful of the time.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. And it will be just 2 testifiers, but the other 3 will want to say their name for the record, pretty much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
When you're ready, Senator Herr.
Okay. I'd like to call the 2 testifiers to come sit with me first. And Madam Chair, thank you for hearing Senate File 1754. In my district, there is a China Friendship Garden, an international gift exchange between St. Paul and our sister city, Changsha of Hunan Province. This project has taken 32 years in the making since 1987, when the Chinese delegation met with our St. Paul mayor, then George Latimer. Finally, 6 years ago, a gift exchange was established, which we sent Changsha our Peanuts character, Snoopy, Charlie Brown, Linus, and Lucy, and the Snoopy house with Woodstock. And they sent us the Qing Dynasty Pavilion. The pavilion could have been placed anywhere in St. Paul, but instead the city chose Eastside St. Paul by accident and learned that Changsha was one of the Hmong ancestral homeland going back 3,000 years. The pavilion is already set in place, and now the Friendship Garden Society needs a little more funding to complete the aesthetic phase 2 of the project. I have here Rosemary Solovic and Mr. Ying Chu Yang He to testify, and others member to mainly just mention their name for the record. So,
welcome to the committee. Who would like to go first?
Mr. Ying first.
Good afternoon. My name is Ying Chu Yang He, the chairman of the Hmong Cultural Plaza Advisory Group for the Minnesota Changsha China Friendship Garden. I'm here today to support the proposal of the legacy funding for the Friendship Garden. We are very lucky, the Hmong people are very lucky that have the Friendship Garden in Minnesota. And we also are very lucky to be Minnesotan, especially resident of St. Paul. And I I am here today to show you that how the Hmong community support this project. The Hmong community is very impressed to this project. Last year, over 300 Hmong participate in the groundbreaking ceremony in July 2018. And over 100 Hmong leaders in Minnesota and over the United States called me to request to be part of the delegation this year to Changsha, Hunan, China, to celebrate the pinnacle, the city of St. Paul, St. to Hunan. And we've been there every day, every week, and the Hmong community take picture with the Hmong heritage wall that has been done and the pavilion there. So everybody have a part of this friendship garden. I also received a lot of phone calls from Hmong leaders in the United States for the element to be built in the Hmong Cultural Plaza. So a lot of idea, a lot of input. So those will be used in the installed in the Hmong Cultural Plaza. And I also received a lot of phone calls to reserve the Friendship Garden for their wedding ceremony. And I told them that we don't have a policy for reserving yet, so they have to be patient. And I also have received a phone call from business people in the Twin City to open the coffee shop close to the garden, a restaurant, in addition to Hmong Village. So those are the interests, interest, and the support for this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chu Yangher. Ms. Slowick, please identify yourself for the record and welcome.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Romy Slowiak. I have come from the East Coast to the east side of St. Paul, a little bit of Asia in between. I'm wearing evidence of this. I am a recovering planner and now an East Side arts activist, and this is the project of a lifetime here. It is just really spectacular the way the Hmong community and the Chinese community are coming together to create this piece of art. I wish Joyce Shao, sitting over here, was able to speak today, but she doesn't feel up to it. What I am interested in is that this is an incredible piece of art. A China garden is a lens into a very ancient culture. It involves poetry. It involves rocks, architecture, which are the male elements, plants, which are symbolic, and water. And the art form is extremely complex, and you will be able to see this once the garden is finished. This particular garden will be unique in the world because of the Hmong Cultural Plaza that it is going to display, which we need money for to design properly. So those are some wonderful things. We're always already seeing a lot of interest. People walk by, they come up to this pavilion, which is really quite spiritual. The traditional China gardens are really temples to nature. They're ways to bring you in touch with the environment. And that's one reason that the design of this and the plantings are going to reflect the sense of balance in China gardens by having native plants wherever possible and being as environmentally friendly and au courant as we need to be. I just want to say that this garden is about friendships. Friendships have been formed between Chinese and Hmong working on this, between neighbors working together, and I just think I'm just really honored to be a part of it, and so glad that Senator Herr has brought this into our neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Senator Herr, you said you had some people that would like to say their name for the record.
Yes. Joy Xiao and Bill Sychak.
I'm Joyce Xiao, and I am the Vice President of Minnesota China Friendship Garden Society.
Thank you and welcome. Thank you.
So my name is Bill Zychek, and I'm a board member and resident of the East Side.
Thank you and welcome. And members, are there any questions? Hearing no further discussion, Senator Herr, Senate File 1754 will be laid over for possible inclusion. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you very much, members and Madam Chair.
Senator Herr, Senate File 2315.
Okay, Madam Chair, members, Senate File 2315 proposed a grant to the Hmong Museum through Minnesota Humanities Center for Hmong Heritage Program to provide classes, exhibit, presentation, and outreach about Hmong history and cultural heritage. Hmong Museum is an all-volunteer run organization that started by and run by community members. They have grown exponentially over the last 5 years and are now in need of arts and culture funding in order to develop programming that meets the rising needs of the community. Our state would receive benefits many times over for the enduring value of works provided by artists affiliated with the Hmong Museum. And members, I will let Ms. Mai Vang here tell you more.
Ms. Vang, welcome to the committee, and please identify yourself for the record.
Madam Chair and Legacy Committee members, thank you for having us here today. My name is Mai Vang. I am founder of Hmong Museum. In front of you, I have a PowerPoint, which I am not going to go over because it will be over the 5-minute mark. So I will just tell you a story about the work that we're doing and a little bit of background about what we do as Hmong Museum. I want to first acknowledge the people who are here supporting Hmong Museum with us. I have with me the Special Guerrilla Unit Hmong veterans. They're sitting in the back, and I want to thank them for being here and other community members who are here in support of Hmong Museum. When Hmong Museum first started in 2014 as a formal entity, culturally specific history preservation and accessible art program for our community was few and far between. What we have learned since then is that the community, both Hmong and non-Hmong, hunger for enriching and educational programs for their families, for themselves, and they are looking for platforms to share their creativity and legacies. I'll give you an example. The Special Guerrilla Unit of Hmong veterans were trained by the American CIA. The Hmong have made Minnesota home for the last 40 years. And they were trained by the CIA to fight alongside the Americans as allies during the Vietnam War. They want to preserve their story and their place in history as veterans, Hmong veterans, and that's what Hmong Museum is doing. So we work directly with them one-on-one on a pilot project to document and capture their stories and to make it easily accessible to the community. So we've created videos that are 10 minutes long that we can share with the community through social media, get it out to as many people as possible. And we want to put more efforts into preserving their legacies. This is only 10 of the stories. These are individuals who were trained, the ones who are alive now, were trained, some of them from the time they were 12 years old by the American CIA. So if you can imagine them working for the United States as allies since the time they were 12, and now they are elders. It's been 40 years since they've been in the United States, and we are quickly losing them. And so this is an urgent matter for us to preserve their stories and legacies so that future generations will be able to complement American history with the contributions of these important veterans. I want to also share with you a story about the impact of Hmong Museum. In your packet, there is a postcard, if you see it in front of you. On the back side is a woman on the postcard. We partnered with a local art museum to bring an international Hmong artist to come as an art exchange with local Hmong artists. And he did a workshop with elders and schools in the community. When he taught the elders about his art-making process, this woman in particular said that she didn't understand what she needed to do. So although the Hmong create and make art, this abstract term of art, there is no term for art in the Hmong language. So trying to teach her this abstract idea was very difficult. And because he was Hmong, he was able to communicate with her and instead asked her a different way about seeing what was in front of her. And then there was a spark. And she said that she sees 3 Hmong women and proceeded to draw and continue her painting. And that's on the backside of that postcard. This was quite possibly the first time in her life that she ever held a paintbrush and a pencil in her hand and was given an opportunity to create. Hmong elders are an incredibly underserved group of talented, knowledgeable people, and they deserve opportunities to explore ways to create and tell their stories in their own way and preserve their legacies for future generations. And Hmong Museum has been providing that for the last 5 years, and every single program I've done with a community member, these are the kind of anecdotes that come out of it. We can't do this without the Arts and Cultural Heritage funding. So I implore you to support Hmong Museum so that we can develop and bring these lifelong learning opportunities to all Minnesotans, including and especially to young Hmong families and to elders in the community through our intergenerational programming that we do. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Fang. Are there questions, members? Thank you, Senator Herr. I do want to say thank you to all the community members who came today, and especially the Hmong veterans who are in the audience, and I appreciate them being here today. Senator Herr, seeing no further discussion, Senate File 2325 will be, 2315 will be laid over for possible inclusion, and thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and this is my last bill for the committee today.
Senate File 2325.
Senate File 2325.
Senator Herr.
And I'd like to ask Mr. Osman Muhammad Ali to come up here as well. The Senate File 2325 asks for appropriation from the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund to the Commissioner of Administration for a grant to the Somali Museum of Minnesota for the Heritage Arts and Cultural Vitality programs to provide classes, exhibit, presentation, and outreach about the Somali community and heritage in Minnesota. Somali population in our state is over 80,000, and we know little about the richness of their culture and arts. And this funding request will help preserve their culture and heritage, as well as educating the public and the young generation of Somali Americans. And with me is Mr. Osman Muhammad Ali, who have been committed his life to collect and preserve Somali artifacts. And so I'd like him to testify further about the organization. And
thank you and welcome to the committee. Would you please state your name for the record?
My name is Osman Ali. I'm the founder and the executive director of the Somali Museum of Minnesota. The Somali Museum of Minnesota, I think you have a folder like this, a nice folder with a lot of good, documents in it. So I did this just to save some time, and you read and look at the documents that's inside that folder. And just to say a few things about the Somali Museum of Minnesota. The Somali Museum of Minnesota is the home for the Somali culture and arts in Minnesota. It's the only institution in North America devoted to preserving and celebrating Somali traditional culture and arts, and offers cultural education for Minnesotans of all ages and backgrounds. We build bridges that connects the Somali community with other communities to learn from each other. We build bridges that connect this community to other communities. It's all about culture and gallery. The museum that we have in Minneapolis, we have a lot of artifacts that people come and visit and look at this rich culture in that museum. And we had last year, 2018, about 2,400 visitors to that exhibit, to that museum. And at the same time, we have an exhibit in the Minnesota History Center. The good thing is we worked on that exhibit and spent a lot of time. And the reason was we were working with the Minnesota History Center to create something that people can learn from it and see the largest Somali immigrant in Minnesota. A lot of people want to know something about this community, and they have to know a lot about their culture. So that we were using the artifact as a tool to educate with the young generation who born and raised here, with their culture and heritage. At the same time, we were educating the non-Somalis, the Minnesotans, as a general, with this unique culture to learn from each other. So the good thing was the exhibit that we made in Minnesota History Center, a lot of people come and visit, and a lot of schools comes. And if you Google and see USA Today, you can see this exhibit was one of the best exhibits in the USA museums. It became one of the best USA exhibits in 2019. If you Google like USA Today, you can find that, and it tells how this exhibit was moving forward. So we are moving forward year after year in exhibit terms wise, and the activities that we are making for the community. If you look at one of the pages, for the activities that we make for the community, you're gonna see, where's my paper? Give me that one. You can see the activities that we make for the community. And it's about cross-cultural workshop and events about Somali food, storytelling, music, and dance, impressive classes in traditional Somali dance, weaving, poetry, traveling exhibits around the Twin City and the greater Minnesota, traditional dance troupe for the teens, moving massive community cultural celebration we make every year. And the last 2 years we make it in Bethel University. We preserve and bring the community together, Somalis and non-Somalis, to learn from that culture. And at least every year we gather 1,500 of Minnesotans on that celebration on that night. We celebrate every year, so that you can see how this youth, out of the 1,500, there is 900 to 1,000 youth from the age of 17 to 22. So we train this youth and make them busy with traditional dance, poets, a lot of activities that we make it happen, and we are so glad that we are moving every year, forward and not staying at the same point. And now I'm going to introduce you with Abdurrahman, one of the community members, to testify something about this museum.
Thank you. Welcome to the committee. Please be brief. We are running out of time in our committee hearings.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Abdurrahman Mahmoud. I'm one of the Somali community members, and Osman Ali asked me to testify about this work and the services that Somali Museum provides to the community. Recently, two of my friends visited Minnesota or Minneapolis from Washington, D.C., the director of Howard University Department of Arts and Culture, and the director of Kentucky African American Heritage Center, and they asked me if I can take them to any place that they can see the Somali culture or artifact. And the only source or place that I can take them was Somali Museum of Minnesota. So I thank to Osman Ali for his work and dedication to serve Minnesotans at large and the Somali community. And his work and dedication helps the Somali communities better advocate for themselves and create a positive narrative about the Somali culture and historical background. Also, his work and the work of the Somali Museum of Minnesota helps other Minnesotans that are non-Somalis to better understand the historical background of this community. Personally, I do coordinate two placemaking art projects, one with Mixed Plot Theater, storytelling project that we are doing at Cedar Riverside neighborhood, and the other project that we're doing at West Bank area is a project that we connect the community through creative projects. And both projects we work with the community and families. And for us to do our work perfectly or succeed with our services that we provide to our communities, continuously we collaborate with the Somali Museum of Minnesota, and we take families and youth to the artifacts that Osman Ali and the Somali Museum collected, and to certain programs that he provided. One of the best programs Osman Ali introduced to Minnesota is Danto. Danto is traditional Somali dance, and it helped Minnesotans with Somali descent, especially the youth that are either born in here or grew up in here with no experience with the Somali culture, to better understand their historical or cultural background, and also other Minnesotans to learn what the background of their new neighbors, new classmates are. So I thank Osman Ali for his dedication and commitment to bring all Minnesotans together and close and to understand each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, are there questions? Thank you. Senator Herr, seeing no further discussion, Senate File 2325 will be laid over for possible inclusion. Thank you for coming today, gentlemen, and thank you, Senator Herr.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Legacy Committee. Thank you.
Senator Hayden. Senator Hayden, we're going to do your two bills together so that you don't have to come back. But I do see that you have a fair amount of testifiers, so I would ask you to please be brief.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Certainly do that. So I swear to move 2401. Is that the first one?
Pardon me?
The first one, 2401.
Yes, when you're ready. 2401, Senator Hayden. And welcome to the committee.
I appreciate it. I don't know if I've testified from this committee before.
We haven't seen you yet this year.
Absolutely.
So welcome.
I am happy. Madam Chair, members of the committee, Senate File 2401. This is the May Day celebration in South Minneapolis. It is sponsored by the Heart of the Beast Puppet and Mass Theater, hence our puppet here. The first May Day parade was celebrated in 1975, just weeks after the Vietnam War ended. It was planned as a protest and use art to heal and bring communities together that have been divided by war. The organizers included the Heart of the Beast artistic director Sandy Spieler, wondered if they should continue with their event. They proceeded with the event as they saw the work that was needed to be done. That remains to be true to this day. The Heart of the Beast Theater, May Day's program bridges and divides communities that speaks to the most important issues of the day. There's nowhere else in Minnesota in one place in one afternoon that you can see authentic cultural expression from so many cultures that makes Minnesota great. Sitting on the curb of Bloomington Avenue on any given year is likely to see Aztec dancers, radical fairies, Native elders, African American youth drum corps, and dance teams. Intergenerational marching bands, labor unions, military veterans, youth groups from the neighborhoods, community centers, and much more. Madam Chair and members, today the May Day cost more than $200,000 to produce, a cost that is no longer sustainable for a small arts organization. My bill will do the following things. The Board of Directors of the Minnesota Humanities Center shall appropriate the total of $300,000 in fiscal year 2020 and 2021 for the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fair. Madam Chair, I'm going to let my testifiers introduce themselves. I think that they had heard you and had sat here long enough to know that they have about a minute or a minute and a half to try to articulate the great work that they do.
Great, welcome to the committee. Who would like to go first?
I can go first.
All right, and please identify yourself for the record.
Yeah, my name is Janata Petrus. I'm an artist in the state of Minnesota and have had the esteemed pleasure to be an artist with the Heart of the Beast Theater for 3 years, working with the May Day Parade. And the May Day has a strong, beloved space in my heart, and that I grew up in the neighborhood that produces it. And for years as a kid and a teenager, got to experience the blossoming of spring through all these beautiful puppets and community members and artists and families and all kinds of folks coming and sharing work that is inspired by social justice issues that are present on our hearts and our minds and our bodies. And I strongly believe that the ways that this event has inspired and transformed lives in levels that are indescribable by me in a minute, but that I feel like if this were to no longer be or not be supported by our state in the way that it deserves to be, that it won't continue to blossom and grow and include more and more generations. So
Thank you, Ms. Petrus. What did you bring with you today? I'd love to see it.
This was a red bird from one of the many parades that we have. So yeah, there's a lot of beautiful puppets to experience in the space. Yeah, tweet, tweet.
Good afternoon. My name is Mary Plaster, and I have ties to Minnesota since my family moved to Apple Valley in 1964.
And welcome.
And I have lived in Duluth for almost 20 years. I'm an artist and an arts facilitator, and I saw my first May Day parade in the 70s and was forever changed. Seeing the diversity of folks in age, background, and experience wielding these giant but lightweight puppets in the street inspired me to choose my paths of art and theater in college. And additionally, I was moved by the philosophy of peaceful communication that affected me to my core spirituality. I believed I could create and make positive change. May Day themes have embraced a variety of social healing, including environmental, race relations, and other common concerns in creating a better world for our children. The scales in the puppets range from the tiniest microorganisms to the largest of whales, immediately capturing the imagination. I've attended as many of these parades as possible over all these years, and most recently as a staff artist for the last 6 years. I don't mind the travel to Minneapolis to be a part of this spectacular event. I believe it's unique in all the world, and I'm so proud that this is my heritage. And I also share my skills as much as I can in greater Minnesota. What I learned by participating has taken me across the United States and Canada to share puppets that sometimes take several people to operate. Complete strangers take up these fantastic beings and quickly make them move together. It is magical to witness. As a result of my travels and social media sharing, I know that In the Heart of the Beast is admired and has made Minneapolis famous internationally as an arts leader.
Thank you. And this must be Ms. Fairbanks?
Yes.
Welcome to the committee, and please identify yourself for the record.
Buju Asanawikwe Indigenous Cause.
My name's Ashley Fairbanks. That was Ojibwe, if you haven't heard it lately. I came here today to talk about how May Day isn't just important to the individuals like us who have came to testify today, but it's an important part of the fabric of what makes Minneapolis a cultural capital. And that fact, right, is the reason why many Fortune 500 companies, why people move here, why our city's successful. But it's also part of the daily lives of people who live in the neighborhoods in Minneapolis like I came from. Those pieces of our cultural capital are quickly disappearing from the city of Minneapolis. With the closing of Intermedia Arts, Patrick's Cabaret, diminished programming at the soap factory, and more, it's becoming harder and harder for people in Minneapolis and for Minnesota to access the arts. Of course, the people who lose access first are the people who need it the most. Kids like me, Native kids who are growing up in the middle of our city, people like me whose lives were really saved by the arts. As we lose more of those pieces, we lose who we are as a people and as a city. Heart of the Beast Theater, which hosts the May Day Parade, sits in the middle of one of the most dense urban Indian populations in America. And more than ever in the past few years, Native kids from the Phillips neighborhood are one of the largest pieces of who gets involved in the May Day Parade. It's really amazing to watch. They've learned to stilt and to build puppets. They found a sense of purpose, and that sense of purpose that people find in the arts is what carries people on to live successful lives. I've moved myself from the bottom 10% of our income earners to the top 10% in my age bracket because of the arts and because of what programs programs like this do to change people's lives. So thank you very much for considering funding.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions? Oh, Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator Hayden, for bringing this bill. And this is an important tradition to support. If anyone hasn't been to the May Day Parade, I encourage you to come. It's an amazing, amazing parade and festival. I've had the pleasure of participating in helping make some of the puppets and the other art, and I've been in the parade a number of years myself. It's a great way to kick off spring, and it is an international, renowned, remarkable festival. So,
thank you. Any further discussion? Well, Senator Hayden, seeing no further discussion, Senate File 2401 will be laid over for possible inclusion, and thank you for bringing all your wonderful art pieces today. And Senator Hayden, you're up next with Senate File 2688.
Well, thank you again, Madam Chair and members. Madam Chair and members, Senate File 2068 is an appropriation to the East African radio station, KALY FM, that offers program and educates and informs Somali and East African immigrants how to preserve their traditions, to improve lives, and to engage productively as members of the community that they now call home. KAAY or KALY is a micro radio station, and though it only has about a 10-mile span, it reaches the highest concentration of East African and Somali individuals in the state. There are approximately 120,000 Somalis living in Minnesota, and they are estimated to reach 75,000 of those folks. So with that, I have a few testifiers, and we'll start with their executive director, Mr. Muhammad Kali, and his testifiers who, Madam Chair, have heard and have been sitting through here and know that they have about a minute or a minute and a half to get through their presentations, which won't do it justice, but it allows us for this bill and others to be heard.
Mr. Kali, welcome to the committee, and please state your name for the record.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Muhammad Kali, and thank you. This great opportunity the board give us. This is our first time we come to the Senate, and we're happy to be here. Somali American Community Radio is the first FM radio in the United States. We're lucky. We have Minnesota, nice Minnesota, and I just want to share with you, we do have all the community. We did a survey, every 10, 9 people listen to this radio. This is where they get the information they need in the state of Minnesota or around United States. And we're here to thank you for this great opportunity. I want to give them general manager to mention about the work we do last 3 years. And we send our message, phone line, app, streaming, Instagram, Facebook, every element we can send the message. And we do have almost the, I want to welcome the manager, Prince Ali, to say a couple of words.
Mr. Ali, welcome to the committee, and please state your name for the record.
My name is Ali. Thank you, Madam Chair and members. I'm the general manager for the radio. It's called The Voice of East African Community. The biggest Somali community outside of Somalia is in Minnesota. We broadcast programs that's educational, fun for families, and teach younger generation about their culture. My first assignment was as a GM to start broadcasting Facebook Live and YouTube so we can reach the younger audience and so they can participate as well. With the limited resources we have, within a week, we reached about 150,000 people in the social media. We all know that in Minnesota, there are a lot of Somali gangs. They get recruited, by the time they're age 17. We have a program that's called Taking Care of the Youth that's run on Sundays. There was 200 moms that went to go close to the airport to go see the graves and how we can help this youth to learn about their culture. We're hoping we actually hired 5 interns within the past 2 days, so we can have somewhere they can go and learn more stuff. We're hoping to hire 3 more, and that's it. Thank you.
Also, I just want to, Madam Chair, I want to also call Layla for 1 minute.
Good, Madam Chair, this is Layla, who is one of the interns. And Layla understands also that we're short on time, so we're glad that she's here.
Welcome. Thank you for coming. Will you please state your name for the record?
Layla, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I have just 3 quick points that I think are like a major positive. So this radio station is like a place that the youth can come and connect with the older people in the community and share their problems and issues, and we can come to a resolution. Second is our youth it's a place that they can come to stay out of the negativity that's all going on nowadays, and it's a place that they could come and build a relationship with all the leaders in the Somali community. And the third major reason I think that this is a big positive is because it's not only a way that we can connect to ourselves, but other cultures and other communities can relate to us, and just we can kind of because Somalis, I feel have a stereotype on them, and I feel this is a good way to get rid of it and build a connection.
Done.
Thank you.
I love it when we have young people come and testify. Did you have someone else, Senator Hayden?
And the last, I want to call Faisal, one of the community leaders.
Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Faisal Deri, and like the director said, I am one of the listeners, and also I was involved with this radio back about 1.5 years now, and I was able to, I mainly do consulting and entrepreneurship and economic development. And also I do a lot of civic engagement to make sure people understand, their civic engagement roles and duties. So some of the programs that I run in this radio, specifically programs about entrepreneurship, was actually widely received and amplified, a program that took us years to make sure that community awareness is out there. So the radio gave us that opportunity to amplify that program. And because of that, we decided, group, myself and others, to volunteer, and we do our time on a voluntary basis with the radio to build a capacity building and mainly help them with financial management and build also leadership coaching and development. So those are the areas that I've been involved with helping with the radio on a voluntary basis on my time. And one of the things that also attracted me during the election is we were able also to educate, people's platforms, and also we were able to educate the community to understand, where they stand, whether, from an issue perspective. Just to be also brief, one of the other programs that really attracted me was also the youth leadership, because this radio gave an opportunity and platform young individuals, girls and boys at the high school level or at the college level to be able to articulate and be productive society members. And I believe the Minnesota taxpayer dollars would be wisely used by this radio based on the dollar amounts and the 75,000 appropriations that they're using. So it's a program that widely, when I ever had a radio program, that I receive calls, which tells me that the audience of this radio always receives, a very active community members, and also educates them. So one of the things that I want to also, as in conclusion, to highlight is the radio is used by local governments to disseminate information. If there are emergencies, like snow emergency and others, it's a vehicle for the community and local governments to issue that platform. Also, other nonprofit organizations in the Twin Cities. This radio become a platform where the dissemination of all this information is disseminated to the community. And I believe that's a very vital program that's needed in Minnesota. And throughout my last 20-something years I've lived in this community, I've never seen an East African geared radio in the Twin Cities. So this was the first one that I've ever seen. So that's one of the reasons that I support the community member. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, other questions? Well, thank you, Senator Hayden. Senate File 2688 will be laid over for possible inclusion, and thank you for coming today.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much.
Senator Matthews. Senator Matthews, Senate File 1417, when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have Senate File 1417, an appropriation for the Minnesota Council on Disability. And in the interest of time, I'll kick it right off to our testifiers, Joan Wilshire and Cody Olson.
Welcome. Who would like to go first?
I would. Good afternoon. I'm Joan Wilshire, the Executive Director of the Minnesota Council on Disability. And just to clarify, we're a small state agency, been around for 46 years, and we exist as an advisory agency to advise the governor, state legislature, state agencies, and the public regarding disability issues. We're here today because we want to really showcase in the disability community the achievements and contribution of Minnesotans with disabilities. As we do this, we think it's important that we somehow document all what has gone on in so many years here and keep it in a format that will help us show our progress and secure a future down the road. And also, as we are looking to move forward, the documentation that you'll get out of this will be a full document from the council showcasing all the historical individuals throughout the state and probably even more. In fact, one of the outcomes from the last funding we received from Legacy was a project we called Keep Moving Forward. It's on our website, and they're 90-second little ads. They're called ads, but they're not really an ad, and it's a voice of people with disabilities that really emphasizes what struggles or challenges they may have in life. And so that's just an example of a good format that we've used in the past. And finally, and that was with Amper's radio station. So I think I'm going to kick it over here to Cody so he can go further.
Thank you very much. Mr. Olson, welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Cody Olson. I'm the Public Policy Director for the Minnesota Council on Disability. And as Jill mentioned, we have several components to our proposal. First, we are aiming to capture our legacy as Minnesotans with disabilities because we were truly at the forefront of the national disability civil rights movement. We want to find those folks around our state who've sacrificed so much for those freedoms that we enjoy today as Minnesotans with disabilities. These cherished stories of historical significance should be heard by all. they should be shared in many formats, from video to audio, photography, and print. And in front of you, you'll notice an example of a postcard that we created in the last project. And the reason that we brought those today is just to highlight the successes that we've had and the human stories. We did such a great job capturing the human element behind a story, and that's what we want to bring to this proposal. Now, what's different is that this content that we capture is going to nurture and inspire Minnesotans in a permanent exhibit, which will be developed in conjunction with learning institutions. And I want to stress that this is an urgent and time-sensitive matter because those leaders who were responsible for defining civil rights for an entire generation of Americans with disabilities are passing on. We're familiar with and we reflect on the recent death of former President George H.W. Bush, who signed the Americans with Disabilities Act into law in 1990. Here in Minnesota, we remember Kathy Wingen, who died recently. She was a disability civil rights leader described by people around her as tenacious and a pioneer. And because of Kathy's efforts, we see a more inclusive city in St. Cloud. Residents can thank Kathy every time they use a curb cut or get to work through Ride a Dial. Stories like Kathy's are exactly what we're hoping to capture through this legacy proposal. And in your packet, I've included a wonderful news article about the life of Kathy Wingen, and I encourage you to read it when you have an opportunity to. Now, our proposal aims to engage with Minnesotans with disabilities, the community, the advocates, and other public members to foster knowledge of the Americans with Disabilities Act, its impact on our modern world, and to generate a greater understanding of the many rights afforded by it. Finally, we hope to influence the culture of Minnesota's professional environment by educating and informing employers on the benefits of hiring people with disabilities. In the United States, the unemployment rate for people with disabilities is 10.5, and here in Minnesota, it's twice that. People on the autism spectrum specifically have higher unemployment rates that range between 70 and 90%. And much of this is caused because of employment discrimination and the stigma that disability holds in the culture of the professional world. Through our legacy proposal, the Council on Disability hopes to build dialogue around ending discrimination that is pervasive in hiring Minnesotans with disabilities. We aim to shift the conversation from what is the expense of employing people with disabilities to what is the value of including people with disabilities in our workforce. The full details and itemized budget can be found in your packets. We're excited to present this proposal and look forward to working with committee members and stakeholders on this project. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you. And members, other questions? Thank you, Senator Mathers. Hearing no further discussion, Senate File 1417 will be laid over for possible inclusion. Thank you very much for coming today.
Madam Chair.
Senator Simonson, there you are. Senator Simonson, Senate File 1387.
Thank you, Madam
Welcome
Chair.
to the committee.
Madam Chair, in the interest of time, I would just like to reference Senate File 1387 as an appropriation for the Great Lakes Aquarium, and I'll turn it over to my testifier.
Senator Simonson, I was in Duluth yesterday, and I don't think I could see the Great Lakes Aquarium from the road. It was so foggy.
You had to get really close. All right.
Welcome to the committee. Who would like to go first?
I will. Thank you, Madam Chair, committee members. Thank you, Senator Simonson. My name is Jay Walker. I'm the Interim Executive Director at the Great Lakes Aquarium. I'm here today with Emma Pardini, our exhibit and graphic designer. Quick side note, you also hear us referred to as Lake Superior Center doing business as Great Lakes Aquarium. The Lake Superior Center Authority is the state entity that was put in place to oversee the state's investments in our building and grounds. Great Lakes Aquarium is a nonprofit organization based in Duluth, Minnesota that was charged by the legislature with delivering freshwater education for our community. Today, 19 years after the aquarium opened on the Duluth waterfront, we are still focused on connecting people with Lake Superior and the waters of the world through hands-on exhibits, animal encounters, education, and interpretive programming. This is an exciting time for us. Attendance has been on the rise consistently for the past 10 years. In 2018, more than 176,000 people participated in aquarium programs. Our educational offerings have expanded to include opportunities for youth and adults with preschool classes, camps, field trip options, volunteering, internships, and public engagement.
We actively collaborate with partners throughout the state on freshwater and Great Lakes education. Most recently, we developed an exhibit about Lake Superior and climate change for the Eco Experience building at the Minnesota State Fair that engaged more than 250,000 people during the run of the fair. Currently, we are showcasing the We Are Water exhibit for a 6-week stay on its statewide tour in partnership with the Fond du Lac Band of Lake Superior Chippewa, Minnesota Humanities Center, and the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. We have a strong history in bringing science, play, wildlife, and water exploration to the public. Several of our past projects have benefited from legacy, arts, and cultural heritage funding. In 2013-14, the award-winning original exhibit Shipwrecks Alive was made possible with $200,000 in legacy funds and more than $150,000 in matching and in-kind support from partners, the aquarium operational budget. More than 500,000 people have engaged with this gallery showcasing Minnesota's underwater history and habitat. In 2015 and 16, the legislature allocated $250,000 in Arts and Culture Heritage Fund that, along with more than $470,000 in matching and in-kind support from individuals, the City of Duluth, and the aquarium's operational budget, made Unsalted Seas a reality. This exhibit focused on large lakes around the world and features a 9,000-gallon sturgeon touch pool, which has become a staple Duluth experience. Legacy funding enables us to leverage significant resources from partners. It allows us to tell big and important stories in accessible and meaningful ways. We are grateful for your past support and the considerations in 2019. The project we heard talk to you today invites people to splash and learn with each other about the wonders of water. It's an exhibit we are calling H2O, and I would like to have Ms. Pardini give you more details on this project.
Thank you. Ms. Pardini, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, committee. My name's Emma Pardini, and as Jay mentioned, I'm an exhibit and graphic designer at Great Lakes Aquarium. And we all know that water is vital to our lives, our communities, and our ecosystems. But at Great Lakes Aquarium, we believe it's not enough to just say water is important. In order to address our current and future water challenges, we have to understand water's role in our lives. We have to be able to take a moment and ask ourselves, why does that raindrop stick to the window on its way down? Why does a river curve back and forth on its way downhill? How do you get a big, heavy boat from sea level all the way up to Duluth to pick up taconite and grain before it takes those goods back out to the ocean? Our proposed exhibit gallery, H2O, will invite exploration of these questions through hands-on interactive exhibits, engaging the public with the unique properties of water, key factors in healthy ecosystem maintenance, and the role that water plays in human communities. The centerpiece of this 2,500 square foot exhibit gallery is a Great Lakes water table, which if you're a visual person, I recommend you to the center of the H2O booklet, as I am a visual person myself. And you'll see there how it demonstrates Minnesota's connection to the world through the flow of water, the migration of animals, and the transport of goods. This new water table will be designed to be accessible and intuitively approachable for all people, with access points at varied heights, audio descriptions of informational content, and rich tactile experiences. Likewise, it will feature place names in English, Ojibwe-Moan, and Braille. Satellite exhibits all around that water table will showcase the physics of water. And we know from our history of experience designing exhibits that strategically placed social cues will stimulate conversation and intergenerational learning. Opportunities to influence cause and effect will promote experimentation. Hands-on challenges and puzzles will encourage creativity and collaboration. And it's all of these skills that are key to the future success of Minnesota communities. We will aim to engage our local and regional communities in all stages of the exhibit development process, building on existing relationships with state, county, city, and sovereign tribal entities to showcase the many human touchpoints with our region's aquatic ecosystems. These partners will be represented in the exhibit through features such as a model wastewater treatment facility compared side by side with aquarium life support systems, and in turn, both of those systems compared to the natural wetland function of the St. Louis River in our own backyard. It will encourage guests to play, to connect, and to reflect, and we hope you will join us in this new adventure. The project budget is $410,000. We are requesting $250,000 from the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund in fiscal year 2020. The remainder of the project will be funded through matching and in-kind support from partners, donors, and the aquarium's operating budget. Thank you for your time and consideration. We'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions? Thank you, Senator Simonson. Hearing no further discussion, Senate File 1387 will be laid over for possible inclusion.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
Senator Simonson, 1388.
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you. Senate File 1388 is an appropriation for the Duluth Children's Museum. And I will also turn that over to my testifier. Welcome.
Simonson.
Thank you. Welcome to the committee. Please identify yourself for the record.
My name is Cameron Kruger. I'm president and CEO of the Duluth Children's Museum. And thank you, Madam Chair and committee, for having me today. Our request is based on a really exciting new adventure for our museum, which is that we've purchased a new property in the Lincoln Park Craft District of Duluth, which is an up-and-coming area that's receiving a ton of investment with craft breweries and new storefronts, a makerspace, a folk school, and we believe that we belong in this corridor. But I want to give you a little bit of background on our museum before I dig too deep into our new project. The Duluth Children's Museum is actually the 5th oldest children's museum in the United States. We've existed since 1930. I know this committee is quite familiar with children's museums. You've heard from a lot of us, but the Duluth Children's Museum has been at the forefront of our movement since the very beginning of children's museums in the United States. We were founded on a collection of artifacts that today numbers about 10,000 items. They include dolls and toys and things you'd expect a children's museum to have, as well as weapons and textiles and a number of things that we've collected just being a sort of diverse organization and operating as a house museum for a period of time. So we straddle a very interesting two worlds in that we care for this really elaborate collection, but what we are, as with most children's museums, is a learning and play center for children and their caregivers. We have really leaned into the idea of play and have adopted standards that make play a really important part of the entire experience that we have, based on Minnesota state educational standards, so that in out-of-school times, like summer and spring break, as it is in Duluth right now, children are continuing to receive classroom-based learning in our center that allows them to continue to expand their minds and grow, and also prepare preschoolers and as young as toddlers for school later on in life because of the experiences they have within our center. So with all that being said, we for the last 6 years have been in the Clyde Park area in Lincoln Park. It's a new development of a restaurant and a sports arena and our center. And we leased that space, which has been a very challenging scenario for us because there isn't a lot that we can do as far as the infrastructure of the space. So we've been working for about 10 years before we even moved there to build a world-class facility. And the purchase of this new building in the Craft District is really the first step on a new, really important adventure for our museum. It means fiscal sustainability for our operations. Instead of leasing a space at the cost that we currently are, we will be paying on a mortgage that is much more reasonable. It allows us to consolidate our operations from 3 different locations into one, and really allows us to build from scratch an experience that can rival other children's museums in the state with things that we don't have right now, like 2-story climables and water tables that just really are they're not feasible in the current space that we're in. The request that I have for you is an additional $100,000 on top of our past requests that we've received in the last 2 bienniums. This is a one-time request, and it's to help us manage this transition. We're going to be operating our current site and continuing to provide really great regionally focused exhibits in that location, while also needing to build exhibits in this new building. And with the support of Legacy, we see that as a possibility. I do want to say that Legacy funding has been incredibly important in building these regionally focused exhibits for us. A couple of great examples are our ore boat, which travels underneath the aerial lift bridge and allows us to, not only is it a playable, so it has a slide and has lots of places to climb, but it allows us to talk about Duluth's shipping economy. And one of my favorite exhibits that we have in our museum is our wigwam, which has a multimedia experience that teaches Ojibwe language. We're on the original site of the Ojibwe tribe in our community, and we wanted to honor that history by bringing Ojibwe language fully into our museum. So every staff person knows at least 3 Ojibwe words. We do a lot of Ojibwe and wild racing programming, and it's really important to what we do, and Legacy is what made that possible for us. So with that, I'd be happy for any questions.
Thank you. Members, are there questions? We need to come up and play someday. Senator Simonson, thank you. With that, Senate File 1388 will be laid over for possible inclusion. Thank you for coming today.
Members.
Senator Clausen. Welcome. Senate File 2683, Senator Clausen.
Well, Chair Root and committee members, thank you for the opportunity to present Senate File 2683. It's a bill seeking an appropriation to support and expand the Minnesota Debate League. Since 2004, the Minnesota Debate League has provided opportunities, resources, and programming to support competitive academic debate in high schools and middle schools in the Twin City area. This program has grown over the years, providing opportunities for over 900 students from 40 partner schools. The program is seeking funding to support and expanding the program to the Rochester and St. Cloud areas. And with that, Madam Chair, you do have a packet of information that we provided each of you, and I am going to turn it over to Amy to start off some testifier information.
Welcome to the committee, and please state your name for the record.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity for allowing us to share the power of debate. My name is Amy Cram-Helwick, and I am the Executive Director of the Minnesota Debate League. We serve almost 1,000 students at 40 middle and high schools in Minneapolis and St. Paul. We are classified as a fine arts program under the Minnesota State High School League, and we provide everything for a school to have an academic competitive debate team. Debate develops leaders, and students in greater Minnesota and the first-ring suburbs are unfortunately missing out. You have a personalized letter showing the state of debate in your district. The next Supreme Court Justice, Anton Scalia or Sonia Sotomayor, could be left unknown. While debate is the oldest MSHSL activity, 118 years in fact, of the 79 schools with active programs, only 19% are in greater Minnesota. 16% are public urban high schools, 3% are private. The rest are all suburban. Students from small towns and rural schools in underrepresented suburbs like Brooklyn Center deserve the benefits of debate too. I'm going to hand it over to Professor Groven to talk about those benefits.
Welcome to the committee.
Thank you. So my name is Bob Groven. I'm a professor and co-chair of the Department of Communication Studies at Augsburg University. So we're debaters. We like evidence. We like good evidence even better. So the three facts that I'm about to give you are not our subjective opinions. These are from peer-reviewed, published studies that have used statistically controlled methods to arrive at these results. First, we have a 100% on-time high school graduation rate. That's 40% above the control group. That's 70% above for African American male students. Second, we have a 99% college admission and attendance rate, and with substantially increased ACT scores to make that possible. And finally, third, these are the result of internal studies that are done independently by the school districts. We can achieve a 12 to 14% increase in MCA reading scores with each year of policy debate, and that increase is over and above the increase that would be normally expected by purpose of age or past academic experience. So those are my key facts, and now I'm going to hand it over to Simon Jarko, who is a junior at Washburn High School and is one half of this year's state debate champion team.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Simon Jarko. I'm a junior at Washburn, a public high school in South Minneapolis. I've been on the Washburn debate team since my freshman year, and I'm now the captain of the team. Debate has opened so many doors for me as a student, mentor, and citizen. The bill we are proposing today can bring debate to the greater community and give other students the opportunities that debate has given me. As a student, debate has taught me research, public speaking, critical thinking, and advocacy skills, all of which regularly help me to succeed in school. Debate has taught me to become passionate about and comfortable discussing topical issues and the politics that surround them. Debating forces me to rigorously explore both sides of an issue, use critical thinking and research skills to formulate a coherent argument across a wide range of topics. Over the course of my debate career, I've become more civically active through volunteering, mentoring, and advocating for causes that are important to me. Debate gives me skills that I need to be informed and involved in politics within and outside of my community and play an active role in shaping the future. High school debate has taught me how to recognize and showcase the skills I have honed to continue my academic career and beyond. As I move forward, I will use the skills I've obtained from debate, teamwork, collaboration, persuasion, and confidence to overcome obstacles and succeed. These benefits were limited to high school for me. However, the UDL facilitates middle school debate programs throughout the city. I had the opportunity to witness the transformative effect debate has on students when the UDL allowed me to create and coach a team at my former middle school. I've been working with 5th through 8th graders at Field Community Schools since fall of 2017 and have seen them grow immensely as debaters and budding citizens. The UDL opens doors to kids that wouldn't otherwise be able to participate in debate, giving them the opportunity to speak up and be heard. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well done. Senator Clausen, I think if we had Mr. Jarko on the floor of the Senate, he'd give us all a run for our money, wouldn't he?
I think so, Madam Chair.
Senator Savinsky.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm shocked at this material you guys gave out with the statistics. I was the head debate coach at my school for a few years, and I just assumed every school had a debate program, as I would hope they would. So thanks for being here today and trying to get more schools participating in the wonderful world of debate.
Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can't claim Washburn. Unfortunately, it's across the street from my district, but a lot of the Washburn young people do live in my district, and it is my mom's alma mater as well. So congratulations to you. And I can also attest my niece, who is a junior at Southwest, was a part of the debate team. She isn't any longer, but she's just about ready to take over the world. So it does do a great deal of good for kids.
Thank you. Member, are there any further comments? Oh, Senator Weber.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question regarding the request. Is there a projected goal as far as the number of schools that you could add with that type of an investment?
Would like that.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair and Senator. The proposal is set up to be scalable, and our programming, we have middle school and high school. I believe the additional schools that we are looking at is the high schools in St. Cloud, high schools in Rochester, Austin, and Worthington. And we have this 118-year history, but there has been quite this consolidation of debate programs. So we would definitely want to, depending on the allocation, then we would also match that with philanthropy. That's what we do with our current programming. 50% of our public dollars from the school districts is matched by philanthropy, and we would go forward with that same model.
Senator Weber. Thank you. Is there any further discussion, members? Seeing none, Senator Clausen, Senate File 2683 will be held over for possible inclusion. And thank you for your patience. I know that you waited a long time today, but thank you for coming.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And thank you to our young student. You did a great job. Thank you. Senator Eaton, we saved the best for last. Senate File 2778. Welcome, and when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill is essentially to provide a grant for the Allied Vietnam War veterans who feel that their story has not been told. I will let
Chairman Rood, members of the committee, thank you.
Please identify
for this
yourself
opportunity
for
to
the
address you
record.
today. I'll be brief in respect for your time, but I want to be as comprehensive as I can be in expressing the importance of this particular project.
Would you identify yourself for the record?
I'm so sorry. My name is Scott Walker. I am the director of the Coalition of Allied Vietnam War Veterans, a coalition of Asian American veterans that served during the Vietnam War. This project is one of a kind from what I can gather. Our intention is to create a timeline of those events in Laos, in Cambodia, and in Vietnam, and in the United States that have been omitted from many of the projects currently in development and has been published in the past. what precipitated this particular project was the PBS program, the Vietnam War. That was a 10-episode project, 18 hours of documentary about the Vietnam War, which completely omitted Laos and Cambodia, which from my constituency was absolutely unbelievable to them. The public television program here in Minnesota 2 years ago also had a program called Minnesota Remembers Vietnam, and these Vietnam veterans and their communities were omitted from that program as well. That was largely supported by the Legacy program. What we're attempting to do here, and what we will be doing, is, in fact, we have already started, is we are creating a timeline of events of the Vietnam War, what our constituents call the Communist War of Aggression. And we will be collecting personal accounts of their experiences, their personal experiences, and placing them on a timeline of each event. And this timeline will be developed and submitted on the 50th anniversary of the ending of the war, or the American participation of the war, I should say, in 2025. It will be published and be offered to the Smithsonian Institute as a personal record of those participants and their accounts. The project has already been started. I have a group of Vietnam veterans around the United States that have already contributed to a website, and we have collected about 1,300 events to date. We have maxed out our website. It's a free website, and all the resources that have, we completely maxed out the capacity of that website. We will be offering these timeline as a resource for educators going forward in history. So rather than depending on secondhand information and other books of scholars that have studied the events, they will be able to go to these particular events and read personal accounts of what happened. For example, the Battle of Khe Sanh, we have a number of veterans that participated at that battle, and their personal accounts will be added on that specific date. There are other events that they participated in. Their accounts will be offered if they choose to put them in other timelines of the project. How are we going to do this? This is an immense project. We realize we attempt, or we will be utilizing existing resources here in the state of Minnesota. So we are now currently working with, in discussions with Concordia University. We intend to create an online database where your personal accounts can either be downloaded or uploaded to our website, either written accounts, oral accounts, or video accounts through YouTube videos or videos used by your iPhones and other smart devices. We will collect those and then place them into that timeline. The computer department there, we're talking with now, and they have agreed to help us develop that database. So that will be utilized by all Minnesotans and others in the United States that want to participate in this project. Additionally, we would like to employ the oral history projects here in our middle schools and our high schools and universities, and so we will offer those projects an opportunity to use their students to collect stories and to enhance the project as well. So this is not just for veterans of Minnesota and of just veterans, but it also reaches out into second generation, third generation of our grandchildren, and has an opportunity for them to learn more about their history, their culture, and the role that their grandparents and their aunts and uncles played during the Vietnam War. This, I believe, is essential in enhancing the continuity and the story of the Vietnam War. Largely, Laos and Cambodia have been completely omitted. Very little material. There are books that have been published, but you will not see comprehensive programs in our in our universities and high schools on Cambodian Laos. The ancillary benefits of this project also is that we ask our students, our younger generation, to get involved in this and to learn more. I personally work with the Asian communities, and I'm absolutely astonished by the second and third generation Asians that have nothing about how they became Minnesotans. Their parents have not really talked much about their experience, and so it's something they really want and really desire. And I think this is a very important way of accomplishing that. To conclude, let me say this. Now, let me give you a little bit of a story that kind of brings this all together. As you know, I work with the Asians, and there is a particular member of our Asian community that during the Khmer Rouge time was captured and sent to the killing fields at age 11. And he worked for 4 years planting rice and nearly died on 3 different occasions. That traumatic experience is living with him for the rest of his life. He was able to make it to the United States, came to Minnesota, lives in Oakdale today, and has a family and had 2 daughters. When his oldest daughter was about 6 years old, one night when they were safe in their homes, she was startled and began to wake up, realizing that clothing was being piled upon her in the middle of the night as she was slept. And as she moved her hand to get through the clothing, she saw her father's face and a bit of a daze. And she raised up to her father and said, "Dad, what are you doing?" And as she was moving the clothing away, he was putting them back on top of her. Suddenly realizing that he was in a nightmare, he stuck back from the bed, sat down on the floor, and getting to his senses, she continued to ask you, "Daddy, what are you doing?" And finally realizing that he was in a state of panic, he removed all the clothing and embraced his daughter. And he said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so very sorry." And finally, she asked him again, "Dad, what are you doing?" And he says, "I'm hiding you from the Khmer Rouge." So these are the stories that we need to hear as Americans. We are so complacent of what we have here in the United States. And these stories are essential to gravitate us back to what we have and what the world looks and sees us as. These Asians came here, they're very quiet because of these stories. It's very difficult for them to tell these things, very difficult. And you don't see many of those Asians. You hear all about the Hmong, the Hmong. But nobody knows about the South Vietnamese. There's 30,000 South Vietnamese here in Minnesota. There's 10,000 Cambodians. There's 15,000 Lao. There's 30,000 Koreans. There's 200,000 South Asians that live here in the state of Minnesota. Their stories have never been heard. And it is up to us as Americans and Minnesotans to try to get those out, to get them recorded before they're dead, and enhance American history that we've been able to provide them. And so I hope that we can get this done. It's only $300,000 next year, $350,000 the next year. Every dime of this money will be leveraged to its maximum. I'm a businessman, and I know how to leverage money. We have projects every day, wanting museums, want physical plants, want heating bills paid, want snow removal done. This money goes to a virtual library that will be maxed out. And so if there is a project, if this project is to have an importance, and the intent of this of the legacy funding, this is what it's all about.
Thank you, sir.
Please accept our opportunity to enhance the history.
Members, are there questions? Thank you, Senator Eaton, for bringing this forward, and thank you for your patience today. With that, Senate File 2778 will be laid over for possible inclusion. Thank you, members, for your patience and your attention today. Seeing no further business before this committee, we are adjourned.